Well, my role is to be the Prime Minister's special representative for the Centenary Commemoration of the First World War. The Prime Minister feels very strongly that this is a very important anniversary to be marked appropriately and properly. And the way he has chosen to do that, or to get the plans up to enable us to do that, is to appoint me and also establish the Department for Culture, Media and Sport as the lead department for implementation. Well, clearly we need to have some fairly large-scale national events along the four-year period, which government will organise and which will be seen as very much UK events. But I think this has to be much, much more than that. We need to reflect the enthusiasm that communities have shown already for marking the centenary of the Great War and all the events during the four-year period. And I'd be really impressed by the number of projects that have been created already in anticipation of the start of that anniversary period in August next year. And I think the reason I use the word tapestry, what most people's experience of this is going to be is precisely that. They're going to see events and projects in their areas which hopefully they will find helpful in explaining how it was that local communities were involved in the Great War, and in particular the people that were from those areas, how they were involved. And I think that brings history to life for people. I think too often history is seen as a rather sort of grey and staid discipline. To bring it to life, you really do need things like a focus on people and activities, and I think we're going to talk about sport particularly. That means something to people, and in those ways you can bring history alive. It becomes a real thing with which they can easily connect. Well, if you want to engage people, you have to go where they are, and clearly, in this country, we love sport, and in particular, we love football. It's a national obsession, isn't it? It just happens that sport had a part to play in the Great War. I'm not going to represent it as being fundamental to the outcome of the war, not at all. But nevertheless, it was one of those, in relation to the Christmas Truce, one of those wonderful, intensely personal things that I think people associate with and are interested in. And the indications we've had already is that people are inspired by the Christmas Truce of 1914 and would like to see that as part of the Centenary Commemorations that we undertake. And I'm very pleased that organisations like the National Children's Football Alliance has taken that up and intend to make sure that the Christmas Truce is a very strong focus for what we do in the early part of the centenary period. Well, the government has said very clearly that we need to have a very strong emphasis on young people and education as part of this. A lot of what we do will be around remembrance, because I think that's what the public would expect, and it's right and proper that we do that. But it has to be much more than that. So we need to have a strong focus on education to establish a legacy from this. And clearly, much of that, most of it, needs to be focused on youngsters, young people. So we intend that during the four-year period, it will be our young people who are the prime focus of the activity that's undertaken. One of my jobs is to go around and talk to other countries to find out what they're doing. Some are doing things that are quite similar to our approach, some quite dramatically different. I think in this country we have been quite clear about our target audience, which clearly population as a whole, but specifically young people. So I think that's one of the unique features of what we propose doing. So heavy emphasis on young people and education. I think we're very well focused on legacy. So at the end of this four-year period, we don't want the thing simply to be consigned to a book We want it to be ongoing, and of course a lot of that is wrapped up with young people who carry the torch forward, clearly. And I think our national commemorations will also be very inspiring in terms of the UK offer to this. It's clear, however, that the expectation is that this will be very much a Commonwealth-looking centenary period. Our Commonwealth partners clearly, historically, were very much involved with us during this period in history, and it would be remarkable if we didn't reflect that in the way that we commemorate the centenary 100 years on. So from the start, this will look very much like a Commonwealth commemoration, so shoulder to shoulder, particularly with our Commonwealth partners, but of course with others from across the divide of this Great War period. Well, I think sport is one way you can do it, because sport, perhaps for some, slightly counterintuitively, isn't always associated with a conflict. It's a largely pacific activity. So I think that's an imaginative way to engage people who otherwise might have felt disconnected from this centenary. So I particularly welcome the work that you're doing around football. There are other sports, of course, that have some historical presence in the years between 1914 and 18, and I suspect strongly that the embryonic plans around those will be developed forward in advance of the start of the centenary period. The Heritage Lottery Fund is being very generous in sponsoring local projects that will engage people, many of whom perhaps wouldn't otherwise have taken part in this. And the whole point of this is to emphasise in people's minds the importance of this period in history, to explore the causes, conduct and consequences of the Great War, and to establish a legacy going forward at a time actually within which we could very easily start to forget some of this, because the Great War for many of us still has some contemporary relevance. Many of us can remember family members and friends who were involved with this 4-year period, but for the next generation that won't be the case, so their accounts are going to be third hand, not second hand. So this offers us a great opportunity, a unique opportunity to make sure that we carry forward a legacy for what is probably the seminal event in our modern history. I actually do think it would be an opportunity that's too good to miss, and the recognition factor around Christmas Truce 1914 is huge. And if I had a concern, it would be that we don't have a unified approach to developing that as a theme. So it looks, if you like, disparate and chaotic. And I think the important thing is that football authorities, national and international, recognise the importance and significance of this, and the appreciation that the public, both in this country and overseas, will give to properly organised events and an overall package that looks coherent. I think that's a challenge. I'm confident it will be achieved by your organisations and others, and I look forward to Christmas next year to seeing this being dealt with in a highly appropriate and productive fashion.